Hello, listeners. Kathy Lawless, Life Story Curator, bringing you the podcast series, How Did I Get Here? A series of interviews designed for people just starting out in their careers, people in transition, or possibly feeling stuck, and giving them access to the stories of people who have been there, done that, so that they might be inspired with some new ideas, or maybe just comforted knowing they're not alone, that everybody starts somewhere and everybody goes through times of transition and times when they feel stuck. Today, I'm very excited to be interviewing Donna Riccardo, and she is the Speaking Power Specialist. Welcome, Donna.
Hi, Kathy. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining. And I got introduced to Donna through Maggie Drucker, who I think was interviewed just a few interviews ago. So I always love it when I get a chance to interview someone and then they introduce me to someone else. And this domino and cascading effect comes into play, which is super fun. So Donna and I met I guess about a month or so ago and got to chatting and, was like, this is a good fit. So let's hear Donna's story. So Donna, if you would, I like to start with the icebreaker questions. Tell us where you grew up, how many siblings, where you were in the birth order, and how do you think kind of the geography of where you grew up and your birth order affected and shaped you as a person?
Okay. I grew up in a small town called Hopewell in New Jersey, which is just like a 15-minute drive west of Princeton. So very central on the west side of the state. Very, small little town, maybe at that time around 2,000 people. I am the older sister of two. So just me and my brother, a year and a half younger. And what else did you ask me?
Well, and so just kind of how you think that birth order, being the oldest and then where you grew up, how do you think that shaped you as a person?
I think it definitely did, because especially, I look at my brother and sometimes other people that I know that were not the firstborn, and I can't speak for other firstborns, but I know for me, I've never had anything that is something in the way. Like there's someone in the way, something in the way, somebody else got there first, somebody else did it first. Like it's never been where I have something in the way. Like I got there first because I was born first, and I'm just going to go.
Wow. It's funny. Out of all the interviews I've done, no one's described it that way before. So that's very insightful in terms of, you're right, no one's ever been in the way. You've come first. So you probably look at life like, there's like no obstacles and that you can kind of tackle anything. I mean, do you think that's really your mindset?
Wow. I do. Yeah. It's like whatever I want, I put my mind to it and I go after it until I get it. And yeah. Sometimes I probably think I probably could have maybe played bigger given that, but I've pretty much gone after and achieved what I wanted to.
Yeah. Wow.
At some level.
Cool. Well, thanks for bringing that up. That's a really neat perspective there. So as a young person, what did you do for activities? And were you and your brother close? I mean, did you play together, or were you kind of, well, I'm the girl, he's the boy, and I'm older, I'm over here kind of thing? Or
I think when we were really little, we might have played together, like maybe between ages of 5 and 10, particularly. We lived in a small non-working farm just outside this town of Hopewell. And there, lots of things to explore and look at. And I think we probably, I don't really remember too well, but I think we probably did then. But then as we began to get a little older, he got involved in his friends and basketball, and and I had my friends and did my thing. So we didn't really do anything together there. But one of my passions early on was dancing. And I, at the age, like a 5, 4, whatever, little girl, I wanted to be a prima ballerina. And that I was in ballet classes for, I don't know, maybe 2 years until they asked my mother to take me out because I was too disruptive. I was probably so excited. I was jumping all around, but and this madam who ran the school in those days, I guess that wasn't a proper behavior for little girls. They asked my mother to take me out, but I always loved some kind of performing and, like little school plays, but it was really the dance.
Dance is what you were attracted to. And the shoes, as we get into your company name here shortly. And I see the shoe in the background on your wall. Very cool. Okay, so introvert or extrovert?
I am actually very introverted.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Even though you're the speaking power specialist. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to say that anything extroverted you see in me has been learned.
Oh, well, this is a great lesson for all of us introverts and other introverts, right? About how you can present in a way of being extroverted.
Yeah.
And always express yourself. Yeah. Okay. On the fun meter, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being couch potato and 5 being life of the party, where would you put yourself?
Probably in the middle, because I have learned some things and I do like to be social, but you're not gonna, find me on the table with the lampshade.
Unless maybe there's dancing involved.
Yeah, no, not even then.
Not even then. Not even then. Okay. And then on the risk meter, same scale, 1 to 5, 1 being the low and 5 being high risk taker. Where do you put yourself?
I guess it depends on the type of risk. If it's more like a personal, like internal kind of risk, something like personal development kind of risk, I'd say 5. Yeah, but I don't know. I guess I've never really been that nervous about doing something active and risky. I'm just less willing to do it these days.
Yeah, there comes a point, right, where we kind of go, what's
Yeah,
what's a really rational thing to do at this point?
exactly.
Well, and it sounds, you talk about being the speaking specialist, and a lot of people would say, public speaking is risky, but obviously that is the business that you're in. So it is funny, when you look at this meter and how we self-rate ourselves versus how others in the outside might rate ourselves in terms of taking risks. So I love those two questions because they really give us some insight into you. And then as we hear your story, we'll hear how those things play out. So, okay. So Donna, tell us about how it is, what it's like to be the speaking power specialist, what you're doing today. And then we'll get into how did I get here?
Yeah. Well, these days it's fun, but that was not always the case. I mean, it's really fun. I did a long workshop on Friday, and I just thought, wow, I've really been missing this, that we haven't been able to get out in person so much. And it just brings me to life and the interaction with people. And, they always enjoy what I bring them. And it's, yeah.
And you started this company then, how long ago?
Coming up on 2 years.
On 2 years. And then of course, one of those 2 years was a COVID year. So it was probably a very
Right?
different year, right?
Yes, most of my speaking got canceled and rescheduled.
But then also I'm guessing, it might have opened up new avenues, right? Because Zoom, and then you don't have to be in the same location with people. Yeah, it's kind of funny how you can have new opportunities when somebody of your probably normal opportunities had the door closed on them.
Yeah, speaking in other places where you wouldn't have normally traveled.
Yeah. So Don, is this, you mentioned that you kind of liked dancing and performing at one point, but when you were in junior high school, what did you think your career was going to be? I mean, did you see yourself as the speaking specialist then?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No, in junior high, in fact, I was kind of more playful up until I was about 11 years old, and my dad had a bad car accident, and it really had he's okay, he's just turned 83, but it had a big effect on me, and I kind of withdrew from the world, and I wasn't really that playful girl anymore. And then I got tired of feeling stuck inside myself, so I started trying different things and some acting classes, and then I saw the movie Saturday Night Fever, and I got obsessed with partner dancing and disco dancing, and so I started doing that as I got near. I guess that was probably at the end of high school, but when I got into high school, at some point, as I was kind of fighting through that feeling of being trapped inside myself, and I had the acting classes, I also got very interested in business. And back then, there wasn't really a lot of opportunities in high school for business classes. So I took what I could. Mm-hmm. And it led to in my senior year, it led to working a half day during my school days in a market research company, which I thought was so interesting. And I was interviewing people as well. So I was helping them with, preparing the surveys. And then I was also calling the recipients of the surveys and interviewing them. So I thought that was all very interesting.
Well, yeah. And as a young person, you're learning about marketing and business, and then you're actually doing it. How cool is that? Because that's when education really takes hold, right? Or learning takes hold, is when you're interested in something, you're doing it. And, and you're learning and growing the whole time, versus it's so hard when we just have to learn from a book, right? Versus learning from doing. What a great experience. My younger sister, she got connected with a counselor, and she was doing the same thing. She had this internship her senior year. And I'm like, wow, here I'm working at the Dairy Queen, and she's working in an office. And then where that office job led was really a great, she had like a rocket on her for, her career in business, whereas Dairy Queen obviously did not do that for me. But very immediately, well, it pointed out to me that I needed more education and I needed a better job. But anyway, so very cool. So then did you decide, or did you go to college? Was college then, you wanted to major in business, or?
I didn't. And I think if I had gotten better counseling, I think they do a better job these days, but I think if I got better counseling, I might have done something different. But at that time, they did with the tests and whatever they did, they decided I would be good with computers or good as an occupational therapist. And that neither, so high school was not interesting to me. And I managed to do a lot of things that I wanted to do, but not very academic. I mean, I took 4 years of foods classes, 4 years of art, a couple of years of acting. My Englishes consisted of films and science fiction. So I managed to do a lot of kind of creative things, especially in the last couple of years, because I fulfilled the requirements to graduate in the first couple. So I didn't really get great guidance. And oddly, I wanted to go to cosmetology school. And they told me, no, oh, you're too smart. You need to stay in school. And I thought, well, that's not a very good message. But at the same time, I stayed in school and those were the things I did. So they weren't really very academic. And in the end, I didn't, after I graduated, I didn't go to college because there was nothing nothing that I wanted to do. And nobody really that was around me to talk to me about it. And so I said, let me work for a year. And I worked in the market research company. Let me work for a year and then I'll go. Well, I worked for a year and then I said I still wanted to go to cosmetology school. I don't really know why, because I was still pretty terrified of people. In fact, in the market research company, I started as an office assistant and then I got promoted to being receptionist. But I was so scared to death of meeting the people that walked in the door and speaking to people. I could barely speak to them when they came in. And I had a part-time job also in a little women's exercise thing, much like the way Curves is today. And I had to give little classes. And I was so scared to just make the announcement that we were having the class. I'd hide behind a desk. I'd crouch down and hide behind the desk to make the announcement that we were starting the class. And then I'd have my back to them the whole time and we're jumping around. So, I didn't have to actually look at them and talk to them. So I couldn't even look at one person in the eye and talk to them at the same time. So in spite of all of that, I went to cosmetology school, and I like to say it was divine intervention that happened, because there certainly was no earthly reason that would have led me there.
Wow, that is so interesting, because a lot of times people don't know what they want, but you had something you really kind of thought you wanted, but people kept trying to talk you out of it. But then you finally, stepped into it, and yet it was also something, it must have scared you too, like you're saying, because now you have to deal with people all the time. I mean, you spend an hour with every client probably.
Yeah.
Creating small talk.
Yeah. Well, I didn't really ever look at them or look at them in the mirror, maybe a glance, I look at their hair.
Ah, okay. So you looked at it more as what you were doing with their hair, not necessarily that you were building a relationship and getting to know them. Oh,
and that happened in spite of myself, right?
Yeah. Well, and as you grow up, right, you get more comfortable with things, and things get a little easier, hopefully. So tell us then what came next.
What came next? So I worked in New Jersey in some small salons for a few years, but I knew I hadn't, gotten very good education. I just got enough to pass the state board, and I started looking for more. And that led me to moving to New York City and doing an apprenticeship at some major high-end salons. And after I completed that apprenticeship and I'd gotten promoted to being a stylist, which was all a very intimidating experience that took over 2 years, I finally managed to do that. And then I'd had this huge goal for the past, at that point, it was probably 7 years. And even in the back of my mind, I thought, well, I would like to have a school. I'd like to have my own salon. Like, that's what I'd been thinking. And now here I am at the end of this apprenticeship and, kind of really on the way finally. And I'm thinking to myself, what's next? What's next? Now what? And I'd walk around the city. I'd walk home. I lived right in the city, and I'd walk home and I'd talk to myself, and what's next? Now what? What's next? I don't know how long it was. Maybe it could have been months, could have been a year. I don't really know. But one day I was doing just that, walking along. What's next? Now what? And I heard something. What I heard was teach. And it was one word. It was really loud. there was no mistaking it or ignoring it. And I remember in my mind, I went crazy. Teach what? Where did that voice come from? Who said that? Like, how do I teach? What do I do? There was no other help, no other answer coming. But it was so clear to me that that's what there was to do. So I began to look for opportunities to do that. And I became the education coordinator. So I helped coordinate the classes for the other apprentices in the salon that I was in. And then we had a huge hair show up, an opportunity to teach from the stage. And I thought, well, this is exciting, but it was also a nervous wreck because our salon was featured in every major fashion magazine every month. We also did runway collections in the fall for major fashion designers, like Donna Riccardo, Perry Ellis, Ralph Lauren, and, all the magazines like Vogue and Italian Vogue and Elle and Harper's Bazaar. And even famous people would come into the salon, people like Christy Brinkley and Brooke Shields and Bob Seger and Don Henley, rock stars and supermodels. And we decided to plan this big hair show. We even had famous stylists coming. So we were in the top 3 salons in the city at that time. And we had famous stylists from England and Scotland coming to join us for the show and be on stage with us. And in the weeks leading up to this show, I was a nervous wreck because I didn't know what to do. So I asked some of my my stylists, my coworkers, like, what do I do? How do I do this? Because they've done it. And they both say the same thing to me independently. They both say the same thing. You just talk about what you're doing while you're doing it. Well, I just said, the words are going to magically fall out of my mouth at the right time. And when the day of the show came, I was all dressed, I felt like, it was in perfect order. I had this like royal purple silk blouse and skinny black leather pants and high-heeled black boots. And, my hair was perfectly in place. And I find myself on stage next to the owner on one side of me and his brother who does all of these all this magazine work on the other side of me. And they introduce me. Mark is his name. He introduces me. And I froze. I panicked. I freaked out. And I just mumbled something. And the people in the front rows start calling out, "We can't hear, we can't hear." And Mark, to his credit, dives to my side. He gently takes the microphone from me and he graciously says, "I'll speak for her. She has a soft voice." And he did. He did exactly what I should have been doing, talking my way through the haircut. And then at the end, I had to take my girl off the stage, style her hair, and bring her back and talk about the finished look. So I bring her back, and Mark, kind of whispers under his breath. He said, "Do you want to say anything?" And all I can think is, I haven't said anything yet. And I just whisper back, "No." And he talks about my finished look. And it was just a disaster. I mean, I was mortified, as you might imagine, because I bombed in front of my peers. But I was also grateful because I know I would have done that whole haircut completely mute and not given the audience what they came for. So
wow, that's amazing that he saw the fright.
No kidding.
And that he could step in and be so comfortable to cover for you. But wow, I'm hearing all of these examples, and then now knowing where you're at is wow, that's pretty amazing. So how did that affect you then? Is that kind of the start of you saying, I want to be a better public speaker, or did you just kind of dive more into, nope, I'm just going to do hair?
Well, neither.
Oh, okay.
It really should have been. And I know people have done that. They have, a bad public speaking experience. I can think my uncle, he's an electrician. He had spoke somewhere and it was horrible. And he's like, "I'm never doing that again." Well, I hated that feeling of feeling stuck inside myself and not being able to do something that I really wanted to do. So, but I didn't do anything about it. Because in the beauty industry, and I don't know if it's still like this, but in those days, especially, people that did that kind of stage work were typically men with big personalities and big egos, and they get up on the stage and they throw hair all around and they flirt with the audience. And I hadn't gone to college where I might have been exposed to something in the world of public speaking. And so somehow I think I realized this much later. In the back of my mind, I must have had it, well, I can't do this because I'm not any of that. Right. So I did nothing. I just kept going to the salon, helping the apprentices, and I did nothing. And then I learned of a company that sends stylists, it's Regis, and they have mall salons and strip mall salons and big store salons, and they send stylists out to these different locations to do advanced training for the stylists. So I learned of that, and we just 5 blocks away from where I was working, we had a big Saks Fifth Avenue. They were the flagship salon, and so I got myself hired there so that I could go out and teach in other salons. Well, I'm going to make a longer story short, but it took 6 months till they finally invited me to take that trip. And I'd come from this heavy duty training background where they trained me to do everything that I had learned, and was now doing. So I'm assuming this was going to be a training trip. And it was a 4-day trip to Boston and Providence, Rhode Island. And I was there with the art director of Regis, and we go out on the road, and the first couple days are great. We do that one-to-one thing I was so comfortable with. And then he said to me, "Oh, you can open tomorrow." And I thought I was going to get trained. I didn't know I was going to have to do anything. And I'm sure I'd been bugging them and that they were thinking, let's just throw her in. I'll never really know. But I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I freaked out. I didn't say anything back to him. I just said, okay. But when I got back in the hotel, I started babbling to myself in the mirror, trying to pretend to practice saying something, anything, and, like doing it with clothes, without clothes, because I'd heard that could help. It doesn't. And I finally got, very little sleep and met the guy, Ian, in the morning. I'm sure I was white as a sheet. I had nothing to say. And then I had a little model, a little lady later on that day. He says, "You can just do her. I'll open in the morning." So I get my little lady later on in the morning. Ian leaves the salon, and so he didn't know what happened, but I know the stylist told him, because I went to cut this little lady's hair, and it was like deja vu. Again, no words were coming out of my mouth. I wasn't saying anything, but this time there was no one there to rescue me. So it was a much smaller group than we'd been in the previous 2 days. And so some of the stylists, they were a little older and more experienced. They were ready to learn in their notebooks, and I'm not talking to them. They started asking me questions. So that was how we kind of painfully got through that. But, after that opportunity never developed into anything, because the next and last day we pop into Boston, into Saks for the last few hours of this trip. And he treats me now like his assistant, hand him things, sweep the floor, hold hair, whatever. So I was really clear where I stood at the end of that trip, and they never invited me to do anything again. But I did start an apprentice training program in the salon, because I didn't know why our apprentices were showing up every day. They weren't getting training, and they weren't getting any promise for the future. So I thought, at least I know how to do that. But I never got an invitation to go on the road again. And it was after that experience that I said, oh, maybe I can learn this. And that's when I went out and started learning.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. So a lot of real gut checks there in terms of being thrown right into the fire and perform, and yet not having any script or any, like you said, any training, like, well, watch me do it and then say what I say kind of thing. There was none of that, right? It was just like, well, why don't you open tomorrow?
Totally. Well, the only thing I can think is that I've been bugging them, telling them I wanted to be a trainer, and never occurred to me that they weren't going to do what you just said.
Yeah.
Training.
And
that came later. I got with another company eventually later, and they did do exactly that. But yeah.
Wow. Okay. So how did your career progress then? So, I mean, at some point here, we're making the jump from stylist over to consultant. So can you start giving us that path?
Yeah, well, I joined Toastmasters. That was one of the first things I did. I took other public speaking like workshops and things like that. And some of it led to more of like an inner learning, more of a spiritual development. So I would say, I got kind of involved in some different things that were of a deeper nature. And so I did that for, that was all, I don't know, for a good 5-6 years, maybe. And then I got very involved in all of that led to a personal development company. And I got very involved with them, and I stopped doing hair, and I became a trainer for them. And I did that for quite a long time.
Wow. So when you finally kind of put your mind to, I need to get better at this speaking thing, it's holding me back. I want to do this stuff, but I can't seem to perform when I'm tapped. So once you kind of made that decision to get more educated, then the doors really started to open for you.
Yeah. And, I learned a lot during those years, and it was a very like inward personal journey. And, but I also learned some other things that I can use now. Like I got trained in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. So, that's something that's useful now. So I've just started trying some different things that would free me up. That was really my goal. I just wanted to feel freed up. And I didn't want to do hair anymore, but I didn't know what to do next. So I just started trying lots of different things. I even went to energy healing school for 3 years, hands-on energy healing. So I just did some different kinds of things, just whatever caught my attention. I'm sure I have a degree in all of it, there somewhere.
Yeah. With all the hours that you've spent on probably certifications and different programs and such. Well,
Yeah.
I too am a fellow Toastmaster. I joined a club that was part of the corporation that I was in. And I remember, actually, it's kind of funny. I remember I was before I did Toastmasters, I was a supervisor back at First Data. And we had gone through some leadership training and supervisor and management training. And I just was drawn to that. I was like, wow, you're really helping me. Because as a supervisor and leading people, I didn't, until I kind of had some frameworks, I was like, how do you do this? And why did I get this job? And what, so it was kind of, I guess I had natural leadership, but I didn't know the science behind it and some of the techniques and frameworks. So, I'm getting in management positions, and then they do more leadership training, and then it's all starting to click for me. And then they asked if I would maybe get certified in this one program called interactive management or interaction management. And which was a program that I had just gone through, and I loved it. And I thought, I'm like, yeah, this is cool. And I was so, flattered that they asked me to get certified and to be part of, to help them out. And I remember driving to the class. I'm, driving there, and I haven't really thought about it. And I got about a block away, and it hits me. I'm going to be speaking. I'm thinking, I'm like, they're going to have me like read what this program is and then get up and practice in front of other people. I mean, I almost hyperventilated. I almost didn't pull into the parking lot, but it was one of those things that I was just so excited that I got asked to do something that I didn't think it through. And then the next thing I know, I'm like, and then I'm like, well, I said yes. So I went in, but I did it. And then the more I did it, I found the more, the better you get and the more confident you get. And then, of course, I do have other programs or other examples where I wasn't quite as prepared as I should have been. But anyway, I did join Toastmasters because I did also want to take it to the next level. And that I saw that, how do you continue to just get better at this skill? Because I think you can always get better and more, more relatable, just more professional, more proficient and all of that. So that was kind of a long story about my Toastmasters. So,
okay. Yeah.
So it sounds like, the stylist was a great launching point for you, but then you started getting drawn to more personal development, and then the speaking and teaching part has also been a common theme. So you got into personal development, and then how and where did that lead?
Let's see. Well, that led to working for them for a few years, which led to moving from New York City to Colorado in 2000. And then once I got here, I did stop doing hair, and I didn't want to work for them anymore. And I didn't have anything else. I didn't know, really how to do anything else. And any of those office skills that I had learned back, in high school were now computerized, and I didn't know how to do any of that either. So I felt kind of lost for quite a while. And I ended up just meeting some different people, because there was a community of people in the personal development company here. And I was a leader still with them, a volunteer leader though. And so I did meet some other people through that community, and I ended up just taking some different jobs. I worked for an architect. I actually worked for him for quite a long time, maybe 7-ish years. And it was just me and him, and we did everything but the design. So, I ran his business and learned QuickBooks and learned some computer stuff. And I then later worked for a couple of different chiropractors, so 2 of them part-time. And so I helped them also with their businesses. So I got some, what it was like to work with an entrepreneur, and, how the different ways they run their businesses, and, some better, some worse.
Yeah.
So that was really good experience to see that.
Well, how did you get those jobs if you didn't have, administrative skills, or you didn't have business skills? And it sounds like you weren't, but maybe at this point you'd overcome it. It sounded like you didn't have the interpersonal skills to go sell yourself. I mean, how did you kind of break through that?
Well, it was through introductions. It was through people that I know that introduced me. And by then it was quite a long time, maybe 20 years by then, since I graduated from cosmetology school and gone through all that New York experience. So by then it was quite a long time. And, I'd become an instructor and a trainer. And, I was like, that was kind of the huge fear that was behind me. Nerves were still there, but the huge fear that was behind me. And I'm organized, and, business things make sense to me, and they like me. So they were willing to show me what to do, because you can teach people how to do things. I mean, none of it was very complicated. It's
Yeah.
simple solopreneur businesses.
Yeah. Well, and if you're confident in your own skin that you can learn something, teach yourself, teach others, and that sounds like that was the skill that you had developed, then yeah, I can see how that would, come across. So cool. Well, then is that when you decided, oh, I want to start my own business, or is there some other?
I think that was there all like for a long time. I think it got put a little bit on the back burner when I was in my late 20s, when I finally got an opportunity to have a salon. My dad would have helped me with the financing and I could have done it. And I really, really had to do some soul searching. Like, do I still want this? And it was a small salon. It was established. It was a great area in the town that I grew up, next door to where I grew up. And I thought, wow, I've been on Madison Avenue. I can't go back. I can't go back to small town New Jersey, and I just can't do it. So I just let that whole thing go. And I really, struggled with that for a long time. But I still, even after all of that, moving here, working for those solopreneurs, I went back to work actually at the personal development company again for another couple of years. I still wasn't doing hair again. And then I didn't want to do that anymore because it was really long hours and it was just exhausting. So I'm like, all right, the only other thing I have is hair. So I went back to being a hairdresser, and all throughout, it's still like, I want my own business. I want my own business. And I didn't know what it would be. And I just didn't know. And so I started thinking and looking around for what's something that I might be able to license or, take on that I could, learn and have that be my business, but I don't have to create it or think of it or write the material or any of that. And I joined BNI. So referral group, right? You probably know what that is, right? Business referral groups. And I joined BNI and I learned of a company, a sister company that they had, that was teaching people everything that BNI doesn't teach them about how to be an entrepreneur. So I licensed that for a little while and I really struggled with it. I'm like, this is just not, something's just wrong with this picture. And it dawned on me, it's because I don't want to be talking about somebody else's stuff. And so I gave that up, which wasn't easy. I gave up BNI, which also was a struggle. I stopped doing hair and I went, I'm like, the thing that I have dealt with, as you know, and have heard through my stories, is the speaking, the confidence and the speaking. And so that's what I have started on the other side of, and now gotten to the successful side of, and that's what I can help people with. And so that's what I decided is what I would do. And I had to start from scratch and I had to make it all up and I had to write things and I had to do all those things I didn't want to do, but I'd rather be struggling with all of that than to do it for someone else.
Yeah, because you have to struggle with the selling part of whatever it is you're selling anyway. So why not be selling yourself, right? I mean, that's pretty much what you kind of concluded, but you probably had to do the other first to realize that, you know what, I didn't think I wanted to do all the from scratch, but then by selling someone else's stuff, you went, wait a minute, or teaching and training, I can do this. Yeah. So it's a series of steps. So, well, that's what's so great. And I love about this podcast is that that's what we get to hear is, well, what are the steps? Because we look at you, on LinkedIn and where you're at today. And it's so powerful to hear, well, how did you get here? And what are all those steps? And everybody's probably got their bomb of speaking or their bomb in their career somehow, that big lesson learned. And so thank you for sharing all that.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking.
So talk a little bit more about what you do today then and your company.
What I do today is I really like working with entrepreneurs because I just feel like entrepreneurs are, they're like the ones, they're the innovators, they're driven, they're the ones out there, doing things, making things happen, taking risks. And I just really like working with entrepreneurs. And so I work with entrepreneurs and I work with them on their public speaking. And I have a course called Show Up, Speak Up, and Get What You Want. But it's not about what to do with your hands or how to write a speech. I mean, it includes some of that, but we include the things that you need as an entrepreneur, like being really clear about your story and how to tell it from the front of the room and being clear about your message and managing your mind. That's a big one that, you don't really hear very often, but I like to say public speaking is an inside job because you have to manage your mind. When you're up there in front of people, you can't let something take you out, either something that happens in front or something that happens in your thoughts. Right. So I have that course and I do different, I have like shorter versions of it and longer versions of it. So I work with people, with groups of people in that. And then I also work one-to-one with people together, creating a signature talk, which again is for an entrepreneur. And I would say passion-driven entrepreneurs that want to get out there and speak and be visible and be seen, heard, and known as experts in their field. And we write that signature talk together where they connect with their audience, teach them something, and make an offer. And it's designed to find business. So I do that too.
Wow. So it almost sounds like that could be some selling training in there too.
It does come in there. I've actually had some sales training a lot along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, it sounds like when you talk about content, that's, that's marketing a lot of times, but it's also about finding the right opportunity and who's in the audience and how do you present it and when do you make the pitch and the close and then all of those pieces. So you kind of cover all of that. Again, how do you make an entrepreneur more successful? So what was the name of your talk again? Speak up, show up, speak up, get what you want. Is that what you
that's the name of my course. Yeah, that's the name of the course. And the name, I do have a signature talk, and that's called Speaking Power, the 3 secrets of public speaking, what you need to know before you ever say a word. And that's my signature talk.
Oh, very cool. Now, is there a book in the making, or have you written a book?
Well, funny you should ask that. So I met this woman through LinkedIn a while back, and she, there's like 40 of us, right? And I was one of the people that she invited to write a chapter in her book. So I kind of forgot about it because this all happened in the fall. And then like a week or so ago, I went, whatever happened to that book? And so I ordered myself a copy and I was reading it. And I thought, wow, like the funny thing is, it's ironic. I don't like to write. And I was reading this thing, like, that's really good. I did a good job. and she didn't really, tweak it or change it or edit it very much, very, very little, like maybe add like a couple words here and there. So I have that already. And I'm in a course right now that I just started. It's a mastermind course. And part of the course is writing a book.
Oh, very cool. Well, I guess, folks, you heard it here first. The book is coming. Is that a good enough accountability pitch for you? Once you start saying things out in the universe, right, then they start to happen. So very cool.
It should be by the fall. I think the course goes until September. So yeah.
Well, congratulations, big decision, and congratulations on your whole path. I mean, you've overcome, quite a few things that where you felt stuck, it sounds like, and stuck in yourself, and that you had to kind of break through that with some personal development and then figure out, well, then what's next and where can I take this? And now you are where you are today. So we finally got to, how did I get here?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, Donna, where, and looking back, and well, we probably need to start wrapping up here. So when you do look back on your career now, which is always easier looking back, right, than it was when you were looking forward. What do you think served you best? Was there a characteristic, a habit, or a discipline, or maybe a personality trait that you think really served you?
Well, I'm fairly driven. So, if I want something, I'm just going to like start going at it. So I think kind of what comes right along with that is tenacity. Mm-hmm. And I'm also just really, I have good attention to detail. So I pay, and I think oddly, I learned that from doing hair in New York. Like the way they trained us was to really be very picky about every little hair. But that kind of spilled over into having, a lot of attention on all kind, like attention to detail on things in general. So I think it's those 3 things.
Tenacity and attention to detail. This one question I had was, how did you get that apprenticeship at that prestigious, you said Manhattan salon. I mean, it sounds like you were at the top. You went right from a local to, Manhattan, top of the top there.
Yeah. Well, do you have time for another little story?
Sure.
Okay. So after 3 years of bouncing around in Jersey salons and not finding what I wanted, one of the places that I interviewed was this guy who wanted to turn his clientele over to someone, which is a perfect opportunity. And he had trained at Vidal Sassoon salon. And I thought, well, why do hair in a little town when I can go to the big city? And so I, got myself in the car, and I lived like a 2.5 hour drive away. So I get myself into the car and I did something one should never do if you don't have to do it on purpose, drive into Manhattan at rush hour.
Oh, geez. Or driving to Manhattan ever.
Right, exactly. And it's only gotten worse. So around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, also a very busy time for a salon, I go waltzing into the salon one day and I just asked them what the deal was about, training or apprenticeships or whatever the guy had told me. And they're like, oh, well, you need to come back, on a Tuesday and bring a model, somebody's hair to demonstrate on. And, that's what you should do. I'm like, oh, okay, all that for nothing, right? So I turn around, I go back home and I cough up a model, and she has this really long hair, like halfway down her back. And we get in the car, we go to 2.5 hours, like a week or two later. Same thing, it had to be at that time though, because it was at class time, right? So we go back in at rush hour and I get her in there, and they come over, the trainer comes over, and this girl's hair is halfway down her back. And he says, well, I mean, is she willing to cut it above her shoulders? And Robin's like, no, 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 I'm not cutting my hair. And they said, well, you're supposed to have a model who's got, one length hair above the shoulders. And they just, what I thought they told me was someone with one length hair. And here was my girl with one length hair, albeit it was long, but, she was ready to lose about an inch.
Oh,
So,
geez.
so they said, well, go ahead and do it anyway. So I did it anyway. And they said, oh, we'll call you in a couple of months. And that was that. So maybe it was 2 weeks later, they called me, and I'm living at that time, I was living in a little apartment, like right on the Delaware River, actually in Pennsylvania, right across the river from Jersey. And they call me up and they say, are you still interested? And I said, yeah. And they go, well, when can you start? I said, well, next week. And they said, well, where are you living? And because they knew the phone number, right? It wasn't a New York number or New Jersey number. And they said, where are you living? I said, well, Pennsylvania. They go, well, we can't hire you if you live in Pennsylvania. And I said, well, I'll move. And when can you start? They said, I'm like, next week. So I hung up the phone, like, wow, I just accepted a job in New York City a week from now. And I have a car, I have an apartment, I have a job, like I got to deal with all of that. So it all fell together. And that's a story of its own, which I won't tell now, but it all fell together. And a week later to the day, I was walking into that salon with the apprenticeship, and they had all the training that I was looking for. And I didn't end up staying there. I ended up going to a different salon where the other stories revolve around that other salon. But they were people that had come from Sassoon, and they carried on the tradition of that training that was so important to me.
Yeah.
And that's how that
Wow.
happened.
So what do you think they saw in you to offer you that? I mean, it sounds like it's a pretty prestigious, or was it a paying apprenticeship? Did you pay them, or they paid you, right?
I got paid. It was, I remember my take home was $101 a week.
Ooh.
It was barely enough to pay my rent, which was $220 a month. So plus tips. But I think, I don't know, I was pretty serious about what I was doing. I was pretty serious and I really wanted it. And I think that, they saw that I was intentional and focused and, driven to do a good job.
And all that came through. And then, and then probably once you got there, then that shows through even more, right? And that you continue to deliver. Well, great. Well, I'm glad I asked that question, because I needed to know that part. And so, because these are all those little steps and all those little things that sometimes we, take for granted that happened to you, for you, or you made it happen. And it was a great stepping stone for where you ended up today. So,
yeah.
Okay. Well, we probably do really need to wrap up. So I'm going to end with one last question. And that is, any words of wisdom that you would like to share that maybe were impactful for you at some point, or that you think would be impactful for others?
I would say two things. One is I just have gone after what was interesting or important to me, and just no matter what anybody said, just doing it anyway. Just I'm sure people said things along the way, I just couldn't hear it, right? Mm-hmm. But I would say just going after it, and it all shakes out. It all came together. Even though I wanted my own business for a long time, this didn't really come together until now, because I didn't have all the pieces. But all the things that I was drawn to and attracted to and interested in, and then took action on, it all led here. And there's a place for all of it in what I'm doing right now. And the other thing is this quote that I love. It's by Eleanor Roosevelt, and it is, "You must do the thing you think you cannot do."
Wow. Well, that kind of ties right into what you said, which was, what do I want to do? And you stayed the course. And then also you did the things that that probably scared you, or that, I mean, you totally had to overcome this speaking and this being extroverted and in a way that, really put yourself out there. So, well, awesome. That's a very inspirational way to end our interview today. So thank you, Donna, for sharing your story.
And thank you, Kathy, again for having me.
And listeners, if you enjoyed today's interview, please subscribe below, and then you'll be alerted as other interviews are published. And if you have any questions for me or for Donna, you can find that you can post your questions on my website, lifestorycurator.com. And then I'll also post Donna's social media information there, so you can get a hold of her should you want to get in touch with her about maybe your speaking or your business and how to move forward. So thank you again, Donna, and listeners, again, stay safe, stay well, and let's keep sharing those stories. Have a great day.